Peace, family, and welcome to another IAmSankofa TV show. Tonight, I'm going to be dealing with the Afro-American League and Council. Me and the sister Jay last week had a conversation where I briefly went over a brief introduction of the founders, how the Afro-American League kind of transitioned to the Afro-American Council. Those councils, from Alexander Waters to Ida B. Wells to John C. Dancy, to Timothy Thomas. And I kind of feel like I didn't give it enough light. Topic that organization, the individuals involved in the organization deserve a little bit more than, a 15, 20-minute conversation. So I'm going to try to, best way as I can, after doing a little bit of research on these organizations, give another show and do a little bit more explaining so the family out there can get a real understanding of how this part of our history is kind of being held away from us. And it's been held away from us for a certain reason, because these individuals, regardless of their ideology, to show the people can really change things. I know we got a lot of family out there that may follow different, schools of thought, different ideologies, but at the end of the day, we all got the same enemy. We all got the same oppressor. And unless we unite and organize and find ways to put our pride to the side, put our ideology to the side, we will never get this oppressor's foot off our neck. So briefly, I just want to explain that. Before I move on, let me also say, rare for me. Normally, I always wanted to do a Sunday show, but I may just start doing the shows to kind of, if something comes up that I want to discuss that, was on my mind, my heart, that I want to bring to the people. Thursday's going to be that day I do that. Also, I'm going to try to build on the wave, like my brother Truthstorian, taking the family, going live at, African monuments, our ancestors' monuments, to show the people that we have real history right here. We really made some strides. And there's no point in time in history when we were not fighting. We didn't sit in darkness until the European came and saved us. Though we are in the diaspora, we're not just sitting on our hind parts. I'm trying not to cuss, so I had to use my country slang, hind parts. But we're not just sitting on our hands waiting for somebody to come save us. We're not gonna play victim. We're gonna get out here and do for self. So first of all, I like to talk about the brother Timothy Thomas Fortune. Timothy Thomas Fortune is very important. He was a very influential civil rights leader, journalist, writer, and editor. He's noted for being a longtime advisor of Booker T. Washington. And some say he was a ghostwriter for Washington's first autobiography, The Story of My Life and Work. So this brother, in the late 1800s, was really, really showing the people how to affect change, how to move the ball down the field, by starting the Afro-American League.
What's up, man?
Oh, peace. Family, my brother just joined me, Truthstorian. How you doing tonight?
All right, how you doing, bro?
Not bad. I was just going over, a brief show introduction, explaining, what we're going to be discussing tonight. Afro-American League and Council. I kind of felt like when I addressed it last week, I didn't really give it its just due. These brothers and sisters deserve a little bit more than what I gave last week. So that's why I reached out to you to try to kind of fill the holes in that I leave open when I try to discuss this.
Yeah, okay.
So first I want to start and build with the brother Timothy Thomas Fortune. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, he is considered, I guess, the founder of the National Afro-American Council.
Yes, he's the founder of the Afro-American Council. Yes, 1890s when he established the league, and it was kind of short, around about 4 years, but he used that platform to try to push legislation to attack lynching laws and anti-segregation laws, predecessor to the Niagara movement, the NAACP.
Yeah, so he's the predecessor to all those organizations, but it came about because there was. Hold on one second, brother. Hold on, right?
No problem.
All right. Yeah. So yeah. So he, basically came up with the idea for the organization, and it had come out of him being aware of prior movements that we had in the earlier part of the 19th century called the convention movement. And these were movements that we began to establish to meet and have state representatives and come up with committees to handle different issues for what is now the Black community. And the council is an outgrowth of that. But in particular, there was an incident that happened that kind of sparked it. And what that was so out of the Civil War and some of the things that came during Reconstruction, one of the positions that we got was postmaster, or someone to handle the mail or some of the business transactions that need to take place, right? And so there was a Black man who had a position in South Carolina.
Yeah, Frazier Barker.
Right. Oh, so I don't know if you discussed the story or not.
I didn't go into deep detail. I'll just explain Timothy Thomas Fortune, Alexander Waters, Ida B. Wells, and John C. Dancy.
Right.
Last week.
That's the thing. So that comes out of that. And that Baker is important because he was lynched, right? And actually, he wasn't. I'm sorry, his house was burned on fire, and I think his 2-year-old got killed, and a couple of his other family members got killed, right? So eventually, the people who were involved, it was a mistrial that happened, but it still causing, Black folks to obviously demand some type of action and justice be happen. One of the people who gets involved is Ida B. Wells, right? And so
right. Ida B. Wells is important because she definitely was one of the ones chronicling the lynches that was going on during that time.
Right. So what happened was after that trial, they tried to get money to get a retrial or handle some other. It was anti-lynching law that they wanted passed, and so here was the connection to today and to something that probably people who might listen to this are aware of because it was back in the news a few years ago, and that is that Baker's wife had gone around and was taking a collection to get him fight for these things. And one of the places she went to that gave her, I think, half of the money was the Emmanuel Church. And if people know what the Emmanuel Church is the AME church that Dylan Roof went into a couple of years ago and killed a group of Black people who were in the church during their meeting and prayer service. So this is the church that Mrs. Baker went to, and they gave her half the funding to do what she had to do and to support her. So it's also showing the links that the church that have in how the church was involved in these social issues. So out of that incident, Ida B. Wells obviously tries to make the issue more aware. So she becomes basically the one who's actually standing up to the system and fighting against lynching. So they want to then form an organization on a national level to address issues of employment, organization, communication, and protection under these laws. So that is one of the root causes for them to actually get together and meet in the first place. And then that leads to Fortune's efforts and him trying to gather the people to the establishment of a national Afro-American Council. So now you have a national council of people who are designating themselves to organize people, or in particular Afro, what they're calling it at this time, Afro-American people. Now, the reason that they use the term Afro-American is because T. Thomas Fortune invented the term Afro-American.
Correct. Exactly. And it was just a way for them to describe themselves. You know, they're African ancestry, but they're born in America.
Right. So there's been struggles, and people struggle to this day of what are Africans in America going to call themselves. So that's a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, that's what begins. So this incident happens, and so you see that's what galvanizes the people, and you'll see that to be a continuing theme throughout all other organizations that they found after that, or involved in founding after that. And that's why Ida B. Wells takes that particular campaign to when the NAACP forms. And now they have an NAACP main office in New York, and she made more writings about the lynchings that were going on. And every time somebody was lynched, they hung a big flag outside the window saying a man was lynched today, just to make awareness. You know, so they're doing these things, tracking now the conditions of Black people on a national scale, so they can bring it back to committees and then implement whatever type of programs that they want to address the issues.
And I think some of those lynchings are documented in a text called "Without Sanctuary."
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yeah. I'm not.
Yeah, I have. Yes, I know she. Ida B. Wells herself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think Alton Hills. You know, Congressman John Lewis, and there was another writer that contributed to.
Right.
They forward in the preface to that book. But if family don't have that book, and you want to get an idea of what was going on during that time, I believe 1880 to 1965, it was 4,700 and I want to say 4,700 documented lynchings, and that does not even count the lynchings that weren't documented. So, I mean, everything from postcards, flyers. I mean, they were selling our ancestors' body parts as artifacts and souvenirs. So this was a very sick time.
Yeah, that's definitely. They did have postcards and a whole industry that they, I guess, kind of created around this.
Another important thing about the creation of the National Afro-American Council was it was led by a brother from the AME Zion Church. I think he was the bishop, Alexander Waters, and I covered him a little bit last week. But
right, so Walters as well is there, but you're gonna find that many of the people come out of the AME Church. That was one of the foundations of the free Black community going back to the early, the late 1800s, with Richard Allen and the establishment of the AME Church. It sit at the center of the free Black community, and up until this day, you see that this is why you're going to see many of those people who are involved in these things, whether they be organizations or banks or schools or the industries or whatever it is, will have some connection to the AME Church.
And they also had a notable brother by the name of John C. Dancy, and he also was met with some turmoil, you know, during his time in North Carolina and Wilmington, per se. I want people to check out the Wilmington Massacre of 1898. I believe that's the date for it, if I'm not mistaken. A locally elected government. You have a lot of Black folks in office, and the opposing side who couldn't handle the fact that they lost, for one, and also they couldn't handle the fact that you have black folks running a city. And Wilmington, North Carolina, and also Durham, North Carolina, is known for being originally black cities.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Dancy was also a postmaster.
He also was a postmaster, correct?
Right, because that was one of the premier positions. So what was happening in the South is that one of the people that they were trying to lynch was the postmaster. Why? Because he was black, and they did not want the black man to be involved in that level of them having, handling your personal business or your money or whatever's being transferred. And in Baker's case, the post office was ran out of his house. So they put fire when they set it, not only to his home and to kill his family, but they wanted to burn down the fact that black people were being charged of the post office. And so the same thing is Dancy as well is a postmaster.
He held a few notable positions. I believe he was the Registrar of Deeds.
Right, so that's all going to come under that, being having basically a government position. And white folks did not like the fact that these people were being governed by black people in any capacity, especially in South Carolina and North Carolina, these places.
So the lynching of course, because the beginning of letting black folks masters was started by President McKinley. To find a way to get black folks assimilated into the culture, provide them jobs. And like the brother Truthstorian said, being a postmaster was a very prestigious position. I mean, handling people's mail, they can get a check in the mail or whatever have you. So as they're trying to push change for their people, they're dealing with real situations, people trying to burn their house down.
And so
John C. Dancy had to flee to Washington, D.C.
So one of the things that also was a pharaoh, one of the things the Klans justified their existence was to protect the purity and the sanctity of the white woman. So they would do these things just like the Emmett Till situation and let you know that you were a predator. So this gave them some validation. They were the champions of the white women. And this was foolishness, but this particular position of postmaster gave people access. They would go around and have contact with white women, obviously, conducting business or whatever. So they used that as another reason, saying that if they can't have these niggas having contact with their women, it was a threat.
Definitely ironic when, and in fact, white Christian men were notoriously known for, raping, sodomizing, and torturing our black women. So they probably was afraid of that karma. They didn't want the same person they probably spit on early that day to, come visit their wife when they was at work.
So, right. So you have the National Afro-American Council. You have T. Thomas Fortune doing his thing. But what made it important is you have the influence of so many different people who are central to really helping our condition and as Africans in America. So you're going to see that a part of this organization was W.E.B. Du Bois, as well as Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, and of course, some of the people that you mentioned. But this is just a clear example of people thinking that these black folks who may have differed on the tactics they wanted to implement to gain us our freedom didn't work together. And this is proof positive that they put all that, it was in their founding, that they put all that to the side, whether they were Democrat, Republican, because most of us were Republican at this time, or whether you're from the Du Bois camp or the Booker T. Washington camp. All that was put to the side, and this is the beginnings of us working together with different ideologies coming together for common causes.
So in a sense, go ahead, my brother.
Go ahead.
I was saying, so in a sense, the National Afro-American Council kind of laid, I ain't gonna say the foundation, but it built on top of the foundation that allowed these leaders to segue into other organizations like the Niagara Movement, the NAACP. Some of the same members that was in these organizations, the National Afro-American League and Council, went on to be members of the NAACP.
So
notably Ida B. Wells and W.B. Du Bois.
They went two ways when the organization split. One camp or one group set of people went to the NAACP, and the other ones went to an organization called the National Urban League. And those two organizations are still around today. So that's what happens after that. The Niagara movement is obviously in between that, like you stated. But the ones that's still around today to see the influence and impact is the National Urban League and the NAACP.
Now, am I correct by saying that the Niagara movement happened in between the National Afro-American Council and the foundation of NAACP? I know some of the same, some of those members were in the Niagara movement as well.
Yes.
Can we build for a minute on the Niagara movement?
The Niagara movement was a similar movement. And they wanted to fight these national issues as well, because lynchings were still taking place, and they wanted to also try to have some economic aspect to it, just like the Afro-American Council. But they started having issues over how much influence, and one of the issues, how much influence will white people have in the organization, because there were white people in the organization. And also, I believe there was an issue with the Niagara movement of women and the role of women in the movement. So this led to...
Mm-hmm. No, I said, well, this one is... I thought this was one of the first movements that allowed women to be in leadership positions and run for certain offices within the organization.
Right, which caused some type of friction in the movement. And the issues with how much, if they had any, which they tried to limit white influence on white members, which led to the lack of resources and funding.
Now we see, and with the Niagara movement, we also saw a little bit of, I ain't gonna say tension, but definitely a differences in tactics and strategy between W.B. Du Bois, William Monroe Trotter, and their movement, which, the Niagara movement and NAACP side, and Booker T. Washington and his Tuskegee model.
Right.
Me and the Sister J kind of built on that last week. Not trying to pick one side over the other, but more or less just trying to describe what strategies and ideologies meant and what we feel one could have did better or worse. And,
And what conclusion?
What would you choose? Right.
Huh? Hello?
Say that again.
I said, what conclusion did you come to?
I mean, me, myself, I kind of can understand where Booker T. Washington was coming from. I didn't want to use the word victim last week, but I definitely feel like we need to become self-sustaining. In order to become self-sustaining, we need to be self-sufficient. So we need to know how to grow our own food, our own clothes. We need to know how to build our own homes, do our own electricity. From the schools those students went to the houses they lived in, they built themselves. And I kind of, and then the other side, the William Monroe trial, they kind of felt like that was accommodating. I think they changed the name of I forgot the name before the Atlanta Compromise, but Atlanta Compromise is a name that the stigma they put on the after the fact. They didn't like the fact that Booker T. Washington was being too accommodating. There was a paper, The Guardian, they kind of used that paper to kind of voice their opinions and differences they had with Booker T. Washington in that movement.
So the two concepts that are called accommodation and agitation, and underlying what they were fighting for were tactics, like I mentioned, on how we might go about attaining equality and some freedom, or freedom and some equality. And agitation was what Du Bois had tried to push. His idea was to agitate the system for change, agitation in the form of protest, agitation in the form of the same access that they would have in the just granting of equal rights and equal protection under the laws. And this was the agitation that they wanted. Now, one would say, well, okay, why would I fight for these things? You're not going to get them. And this is where the concept, I think, ill placed, that when people look at it, that they are just trying to be integrationists. And that was some of the furthest things from the people that, from mine, who were involved. They did not want necessarily integration. They wanted access to the same things that the greater society had, which had put them in the positions that they were in, which was better than the positions that we were in on a great scale. And they also wanted equal protection under the law, which was something that people want, whether they want to take down this government or not. If somebody robbing you, well, it won't matter how you feel about the police. If that person got a gun to your head, you're going to hope the police is coming around that corner.
And you want to be able to defend yourself and not worry about being lynched because you killed a white man.
Right. So those things will happen when you agitate a system for change, when you keep putting pressures in various forms for change. The other side of that was Booker T and his accommodationism, and he said that he would do none of that. Okay, we won't fight for the right to vote, and we won't fight for equal rights, in the favor that you give us a little bit of space to achieve what we want to achieve. And for the greatest, it's a really deep conversation that I don't think people have as far as the tactics and what was really going on. But just briefly, that's what they had. That was an issue. It was agitation versus accommodation. And how accommodating would you be to the society who's still putting their foot on your neck in various ways?
Now, do you agree that the word accommodation is the appropriate word for it?
Yes, because that's what they do. They were accommodating those things that happen, because people use the word today in various ways, and it has the same weight to it. You were accommodating those things because you refused to fight for those things in favor of something else, but this is the tactics that you chose. And in a big degree, it led to a lot of things that were very positive and constructive, of course, because the Booker T-ites or Washingtonians, I forget exactly what they call, achieved. I mean, the history, our Black history book is littered with people who come from his particular camp of greatness. T. Thomas Fortune was one of the main Booker T people. And if you look at the picture that's with the National Afro-American Council, the person that's standing in the middle of the picture with all of them, probably like 50 to 100 people, I forget how many's on it, is Booker T. Washington.
Right.
So it's unquestionable his impact in that regard, but he was accommodating to achieve a lot of that, and there's a lot of other stuff that came with it. And the ways that he wanted to implement it didn't necessarily do us any good if you look at things now, but that's just another discussion in general.
That's another discussion. That's definitely a debate that I feel, I ain't necessarily debate, but a discussion that need to be had, so we can kind of find those things within those two groups and either merge them or just take the foundation of them and trying to remix them and use them, how we can today.
So this is what we're doing. And if you're saying that, then we have an organization and we have pictures and records of proof that people from the Du Bois camp and the Booker T. Washington camp put their differences to the side and joined the national organization and the council for Afro-Americans. Du Bois ended up being head of, I think, literacy and or some other department, and our committee, and Booker T was the head of, I think, an economic development committee, all under the auspices of the National Afro-American Council. So they did put the differences aside in favor of the greater good.
Yeah, I definitely think there's elements. I don't like getting into the beef that was kind of engineered by people within the community at the time, saying Du Bois was against Booker T and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. But it's more.
But I definitely agree that it's definitely more that needs to be discussed on it, and
it's more that needs to
bring some clarity to the picture.
It's more that needs to be read on it before you can really delve into a discussion on it. People.
I believe the sister Terrain Wright wrote a book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. She just recently wrote a book on Booker T. Washington. Let me find that. Right, I got it. If anyone's interested in reading it, it's Dr. Terrain Wright. She wrote a book called Booker T. Washington and Africa, the Making of a Pan-Africanist. Early this year, she released a book. Having a chance to read it, but I definitely feel like, I know a lot of us get kind of lost in debating or studying ancient time history and achievements that our people had, but we kind of gloss over these, 17, 1800 Black pioneers. I think, man, you had we chatted about how, put these people during this time, these ancestors turned the 1700s, 1800s against, anyone else, and their resume was stacked just as high.
These people that's my particular,
put people on the front line. I mean, these people were on the front lines every day in a situation where at any point in time you could be gunned down. You spoke before on Octavius Cotto, gunned down.
Well, at the time we had a closer affinity for organization and cooperation, which led to the development of those organizations that we saw that came out of the 19th century, that laid the foundation and were the catalyst for what came in the 20th century and why they were able to do things. But somewhere in there, the tactics or just the times changed, and that Black community, for a number of reasons, was not as tight as it could have been. We weren't always doing good, but we was a little tired of forming organizations that could achieve certain things. And through the process of the government realizing these things and wiping out our ability to organize with counterintelligence programs, we see what we got.
I agree. So, after the dust settled, after the National Afro-American Council, it transformed itself, into the Niagara movement, into ultimately NAACP movement. A lot of people kind of give flat to the NAACP because it has some founding members who were not African.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And it was for specific goals and whatever that for our full benefit, and people manipulated that for their benefit. And
why you think it was necessary? Do you think it was necessary to have, as far as trying to push the movement forward, trying to have a sort of white face somewhere in the community, somewhere within the organization, which I don't agree with, because we've obviously seen different, Black African organizations that move without interference from Europeans. But what do you think was, going through the minds of them at the time when they accepted? I believe, I know a couple of them had like Mary White Oppington, if I'm not mistaken. I know she was one of them.
Was one of the main ones.
Right. What would make them at the time, accept members who were European?
In many cases are descendants or grandchildren of abolitionists. So, to a certain extent, is going to be in their lineage. They were involved in these particular causes and were the of money, houses for these particular groups. They wanted to, the idea was for them, they have some type of coalition in certain parts of their mind. You can't do it alone. And this is what people, this is how it's formed. All the Niagara movement is, do we involve them in our issues? Because we had a history of them being there all the way going back to the slave master sitting in the church or the gathering when you doing your thing. He sat right in the midst. If he didn't necessarily, and then there's there's an organization where they don't, where they're not, but in these organizations happen now, coming together on this common cause, and there's a whole lot of things going on. Urbanization will move into the cities, which is changing it. There's a lot of stuff, but they had always been involved in some degree, and many of which, caused a rift in certain, like moving others. The funding, yeah, they had the money in order to. You got to go meet somewhere. You got to go eat somewhere. You got to do these things, and they're willing to provide money and research things. That's what it was.
You gotta have somewhere to go to meet in secrecy. So any organization.
Booker T. Washington went around and got his money. Booker T. Washington went to. He went to go have help. Rosenweed, a Jewish man, to go and get moves in there. People were educated on schools, and he, got money from.
Brother Danny, you breaking up.
So, can you hear me?
You was breaking. Okay. I can hear you.
I was just saying that Booker T. Washington got a lot of his money and resources from white folks, from Mark Twain, from Julius Rosenweed, and who gave him money to build up those schools that he was trying to. So it wasn't like, he was completely this autonomous black figure who was doing that. He got a lot of his money, so.
Definitely interesting. I'm definitely gonna. I may go ahead and open up that book and read it and definitely get a better understanding, because this is a topic that I agree with you definitely needs more discussion. We teach. Mm-hmm. We can teach our babies more than just us getting beat down, but we can also try to teach. We also show them the side where we were fighting, we were organizing, we were actually moving. For those who think that black people can't get along, we always fighting and arguing. We had real world examples.
One through our experience of black fighting. You can't find one.
Say that again, brother. You was breaking up.
You cannot in America where black people have not been fighting since we've been here.
You hear that, family? I agree. There's always been opposition. There's always been, the thought of and the action of getting the oppressor's foot off on that. Mm-hmm. I said earlier, we wasn't sitting on our hands waiting on any, sky daddy or invisible person to come save us. We did for ourselves.
Yeah,
we had to.
Oh, my brother, I gotta step off, man.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. I had to get off myself. We definitely gonna continue building. I may make Thursdays the day to continue this. So for all the family that's watching, that's tuning in to the show, I appreciate it. Thanks to the brother Truthstorian for coming through, building with us on this topic. You can check me out this Sunday for Food for Thought Sundays. Check us out. Appreciate you, brother Dan, for coming on. All right, peace, family.